Basically, what the topic is today, Microsoft has made some very strict rules as to what you can do for upgrading from Windows 10 to Windows 11. And if you have an old computer that's more than maybe a couple of years old, Microsoft's tool that says, are you eligible to upgrade to Windows 11, you may fail. And there's a company or a group of open source developers that came up with a little utility that disables the system that checks to determine if your computer meets the minimum requirements. And in order to show you the tool, I just wanted to explain what exactly the tool is doing to get around. There are basically three things. The first one is what is the Unified Extensible Firmware Interface? This is a replacement for what used to be the basic input-output system, or the BIOS of a computer. The regular traditional BIOS is going away and being replaced by the UEFI firmware. And I have a link included that when I pass out the meeting notes, it'll have all of these links in there. And this is a link where you can read a little bit more about the Unified Extensible Firmware Interface in case you're interested. The big thing that Microsoft has involved with the new version of Windows 11 is what they call TPM 2.0, or the Trusted Platform Module. And this has been around for quite some time, since July of 2016. Theoretically, according to Microsoft, all computer hardware, such as CPUs, graphics cards, everything need to have TPM 2.0 installed. And not all hardware manufacturers complied with Microsoft's wishes. So not every computer has that feature enabled on the motherboard. And TPM handles security features for Windows, and such as handling encryption. And most importantly, when you log into Windows, many of you may have seen this in Windows 10, because Windows 10 also supports and uses the TPM technology, and that's in the area of biometric authentication. Biometrics like fingerprint authorization and facial recognition are covered by the TPM chip on the motherboard. And it provides, as it says, hardware-based security, and it's what they call a crypto processor. And Microsoft looks for that chip during the setup process, and if it doesn't see it, it tells you that your computer doesn't meet the minimum requirements, even though Windows doesn't really need to have that to run. I don't know why Microsoft decided that this was a hard requirement or not, but it's not necessary to use Windows. And here's another link that shows an explanation of Microsoft's definition of why you should have TPM installed. Now, does your computer have TPM installed? Any one of you can open up a command prompt and type in tpm.msc. So if I open up a command prompt, and it doesn't have to be an administrator, and I type in tpm.msc, and it brings up the Trusted Platform Module application. If your computer has TPM 2.0, this module will come up and it won't have any error messages. It won't show anything being disabled. And it just shows you here, the overview is that Windows computers containing a Trusted Platform Module provide enhanced security features. And this is the basic reason why Microsoft wanted to enforce the implementation of TPM. And this basically shows that my TPM manufacturer and the specification that I'm running is version 2.0. And let's go out of here and back to the presentation. And then here is a link that you can all read it on your own time, how Windows uses TPM specifically. The next topic that is covered under this application is device encryption. It's Windows wants you to have device encryption. And basically what that means is it uses a Bitlocker code, and Bitlocker is an encryption key. And this is completely independent from the Bitlocker that is included with Windows Pro. There's Bitlocker Drive encryption, and there's Bitlocker Windows encryption, which is only available in the professional version of Windows. Device encryption is available to anyone running Windows. One way to notice that you have Windows device encryption turned on is to look in the BIOS, and it will tell you. If you have an EMFI BIOS, what was that called again? UEFI BIOS. You probably have device encryption turned on. This particular tool requires that you not have device encryption turned on. And if you have an older computer, the more likely it is that you don't, which benefits this particular environment. And as I said, if device encryption isn't available on your device, you might be able to turn it on, but you must have Windows Pro, which costs a little bit more. The BitLocker code, let's say if you were to dual boot your computer into Linux, and in Linux, you used to be able to view your NTFS file system and access the computer files and maybe recover files that were unavailable to you because Windows doesn't boot anymore. Well, device encryption will prevent another operating system or prying eyes from looking at that hard drive. So if your computer doesn't boot anymore and you need to go into safe mode, for example, safe mode is going to ask you for your BitLocker recovery key. And again, this is your hard drive BitLocker key, not your Windows BitLocker key. And your BitLocker recovery key, does anybody have a question about that? No? Okay. Your BitLocker recovery key is a unique 48-digit numerical password that can be used to unlock your system if BitLocker is otherwise unable to confirm attempts to access the system are authorized. Now, everybody that has a BitLocker recovery key on their system should have a copy of it printed out someplace in there with their personal information, with your passwords and things. If any of you have a computer that's relatively new and you want to boot into safe mode will ask you for this 48-digit code. And most people have no idea where it is. If you go into the search function of Windows and you type in BitLocker, you'll see that it comes up with device encryption settings. And under device encryption settings is my BitLocker device encryption. And this will be an area where if you're on home, you'll see this. If you're on Pro, you'll have some additional features. Inside here, there's an option to back up your recovery key. And if you click on back up your recovery key, it gives you the option to either save it to a file or print it. If you choose to save it to a file, it just simply creates an automatic file name and you save it and put it someplace safe. If I were to save that file out and then go into File Manager, here's my BitLocker recovery key file in my downloads folder, my documents folder. And I'm not going to open this file because it contains my computer's 48-digit BitLocker codes. So,
Hey,
and I don't
Drew,
want,
you don't want to necessarily save this on your computer. That's not a good thing to do. You need to save it someplace that's in the cloud or off your computer, because you can't get it if it's on your computer and you're locked out.
that is correct. You want to have a copy of this stored. I use a password management program called KeyPass, and I have my Bitlocker Recovery Key stored inside my KeyPass database. And I also have it stored on my cloud account.
Exactly. So by the way, just when you were talking about TPM, I did try to run TPM as a user. It said I needed administrator privileges, and I have Windows 10.
Oh, you do?
So,
okay.
So you have to run it as an administrator. Just a small correction.
Okay.
Disagree with that. I just ran it and I did not need it, and I'm on Windows 10.
Well, you're better than I am, Joel.
I don't think I have administrative privileges. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I have two users. One's the administrator and one's just me. And I do that for security purposes. So if you only have one user on your machine, you may be administrator, Joel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I had the same experience as Joel. It worked without going into administrative mode.
Ditto here. I got a Microsoft Surface.
Yeah, if you have a
Peter,
standard,
I think you're a second-class citizen today.
What do you mean today?
A single user system is going to behave differently from a multi-user system.
Ah.
If you have only one account, it is the administrator account.
Thanks, Bob.
right, and that's the way I have my computer set up. Is I'm logged on technically as an administrator. But what you can do in the event that you're not logged on as administrator, if you type in the CMD in the search box, you'll have the option to run as administrator. And if I click on run as administrator, it'll confirm that I need permission to do that. And then this is now an elevated administrator DOS box where you can then type in that command and it will work.
And I did the same thing one step shorter, Drew. In the run box, I typed tpm.msc and it came up and it asked me if I wanted to run as administrator or not. And then, I can go directly, and it goes directly to it.
Oh, okay. So if you go into tpm.msc, it comes up and you can open it. Mine is just going to open because I'm already the administrator.
Right.
Mine was already open.
Right. And I think the point is if you're a single user machine, then by default, you have to be the administrator. And so I have it set up as two accounts. The administrator is a privileged account, and then I run everything on some other account, and I have my own account that I just run on. So I just do that for security, because I'm crazy like that.
Peter's way is safer.
Oh, and somebody has a question. If someone forces the Windows 11 upgrade on a non-eligible PC, will that PC get future or present Windows 11 updates? And the answer to that question is absolutely yes.
Really? I thought Microsoft said no.
I haven't actually installed a Windows computer this way to confirm it myself. But my understanding through the reading that I've done on this technology is that there's no difference in your Windows user experience after the Windows is actually installed.
Good to know.
So now you know where your Bitlocker recovery key is, and your recovery key is also stored in your Microsoft account. So suppose and Windows 11, by the way, actually requires that you have a Microsoft account. Windows 10, it was optional to have a Microsoft account. Windows 11, specifically with the Home Edition, during the initial setup, when you buy a computer and bring it home and turn it on for the very first time, it's going to force you to create a Microsoft account if you don't already have one.
So Drew, when you do that, how do you stop Microsoft because I'm a little paranoid, maybe a lot paranoid. But how do you stop Microsoft from snooping? Because once you associate your computer with a Microsoft account, Microsoft then has access to your machine, so to speak. And I don't really like that. So I try to avoid things like that. I never log on to my Microsoft account or any other accounts like that when I'm working.
Well, then you're stuck on Windows 10.
In Pro, you can revert the account to a local account, or you can install it as a local account. It's a lot of hoops to jump through, but you can do it.
I
And by
guess
the-
what confuses me is, since you told us a couple of weeks ago that there really wasn't anything that was all that special on 11, if I have a machine that's 5 or 6 years old and I've already found out that it's outside of Microsoft's window, to upgrade, why shouldn't I just leave it at 10?
That's
Well-
my environment, John.
Well, you might want to leave it at 10, and you might want to take advantage of some of the new features in Windows 11. Aside from the cosmetic changes, you can run Ubuntu command prompt technology on Windows 11. And if I launch Ubuntu on my computer, this is using what Microsoft calls the Windows subsystem for Linux. And this is downloaded from the Microsoft Store. And it's a hybrid version of what comes directly from Ubuntu and what Microsoft has done to it. But you can type in, I can type in regular commands. I don't have any files in here, but if I type in man, it might bring up a man page.
But I suspect that for somebody like me who's using the computer for more mundane purposes, I don't need any of that.
You're correct. If you're a Unix person and you want to be able to type in, command line Linux tools, you might want to take advantage of that. And the other thing that you might want to do is run Android applications. Many of the applications that I have on here are actually Android applications. If I go into, let me see what happens if I run LinkedIn on my computer here right now. I haven't tested this. Yeah, this is my LinkedIn account, and this is not a LinkedIn app. If you have Windows 10 or the basic version of Windows 11, and you want to get into LinkedIn, you go in through your web browser. I don't go in through a web browser anymore. I go in through the same LinkedIn app that I use on my cell phone. And I will get Windows notifications and updates, if I so choose, from LinkedIn if somebody sends me an update. And there are a plethora of applications, thousands of them, literally inside the App Store that you can run and learn about Linux applications. The Foxit PDF reader that I use is a Linux application. My File Explorer is a Linux application. And I don't have it on this machine right now, I don't think. Oh, Twitter. Twitter is another application that I use the Android version of the software for. And this is an example of what Twitter looks like. Now I have to get out of this. So one of the things that Microsoft has brought to Windows 11 are some new features. One of those being the ability to run any one of thousands of Android software programs. And if you have an Android cell phone, you're probably familiar with seeing the Google Play App Store. This doesn't come with Windows 11 by default. This is something that technical people like myself learn how to do, and with through what they call side loading, installing applications that are not come from Microsoft. And at a future date, that could be another topic for a potpourri session. So we've covered the finding your BitLocker keys. And here finally, for the description, your Microsoft technical documentation, where I learn a lot of this stuff, comes from docs.microsoft.com. And you can go in there and look at a plethora of documentation that Microsoft has for all of their products. Most people may not even know that that exists. But there's a full set of documentation. And this is, if you also, oh, your BitLocker
The
key.
voice sounded familiar.
Excuse me? Let's see, Mitch, the BIOS type is visible in the, MS32 utility. Okay. That's interesting to know too. Thank you. If you click on, if you navigate to accounts.microsoft.com/devices, let's say your computer fails and you don't have your BitLocker recovery key. You can go to another computer and log on as, in this case, dking65 at Outlook. And you'll be able to go in and look at your BitLocker keys that way.
Drew, I'm not seeing your password. Is that important?
You're not supposed to see my password.
Oh, damn.
I
And-
saw it. It was a bunch of dots.
Yes, that's what it is. My password is 12 consecutive asterisks.
Drew, where do you stand on your talk? Because we want to show some videos as well.
I am just about done here. I'm going to show the demo, which will only take about 2 or 3 minutes.
And then I wanted to know, would you be able to send me the your slides that have all the links in it so that I can put them on the wiki for people?
Absolutely. I'll do that right after my demo.
Sounds good.
Okay, so the software program that we're going to use comes from a company called Rufus that makes an application called Rufus. And I will go in and type in Rufus, or RUFUS. And oops, not Trufus, Rufus. And that will bring you to this website where you can create bootable USB drives. And this does a bunch of different things. And one of which is just to create, as in this case, if you want to download Ubuntu and create a bootable flash drive so that you can run Ubuntu, this will do that. It also works to create Windows boot drives like we're going to do in this demo. So I'm going to...
This is free, Drew?
Yes, it is free. Now, I have installed in my computer, which you can't see, a USB 2.0 flash drive, 3.0 flash drive. And it's a device that this particular one has multiple partitions on it because it's a Linux flash drive. And if I go to in my computer and I search for Windows, and I select my Windows 11 ISO file, you'll see that the persistent partition size is going to say standard Windows 11 installation with TPM 2.0 and secure boot. What you'll want to do here is change that to extended Windows 11 installation with no TPM and no secure boot. And then you go ahead, you can set the format, the label, whatever you want to create it as. The file system will be NTFS. And then you click on Start, and it will create that boot flash for you. And then when you reboot your computer and you boot off of the USB drive, it will launch the installation for Windows 11 and allow you to upgrade your Windows 10 computer without complaining about TPM. So as far as installing Windows is concerned, upgrading from Windows 10 to Windows 11 will be using the standard Microsoft upgrade utility. It's going to be the same version of Windows 11 from the Windows ISO file that you download from the Microsoft website. This utility is merely creating, a workaround for you to bypass the need for that trusted platform module. And that's basically what this utility does. It does a similar thing for Linux. I'll show you that real quick. I'll give for about 20 seconds. If I go into here and I type in Linux, oops, is it LI? Oops, I guess I don't have it. I thought I had Linux Mint installed on here. I guess I don't. Linux, if I had Linux on here, a Linux ISO file, it would give me an option to create a persistent partition, meaning that it would create a usable version of Linux on a flash drive. And at this point, I will take any questions that anybody has.
Drew,
Yes.
one thing that I just want to mention, that there is another tool similar to Rufus called Venty, which has the advantage you can put all your Linux and Windows onto one USB.
Yes, I have heard of that utility. That gives you the ability to create multiple Linux Live implementations where you boot into Linux and you go to a website, and then when you shut down Linux and go into it the next time, it's as if you had never used that Linux before.
Right.
What this does is creates a persistent version of Linux so
Right.
that it gives you the ability. Let's say you have only one computer, but you'd like to be a Linux user. You can create a Linux boot flash drive that will let you boot into Linux, which runs very well on a computer once it boots off the flash drive. And if you save a bookmark, for example, or download a file, it will do that to the flash drive so that the next time you boot into Linux, you'll be right where you left off. If you install software, that software will still be there. That's the major difference between this utility and that other utility.
Actually, there is a way of making Venty persistent, but it's more complicated.
With this one, you basically just, if this ISO file were a Linux ISO file, the persistent partition size would be a sliding bar, and you would basically just choose what percentage of your flash drive you want to have be your data drive, and which one is going to be your boot drive.
Yes, I agree. It's best to stick with just one Linux if you're going to use persistence, one operating system per flash drive.
Per flash drive. And, I'm using a 16 gig flash drive, which has plenty of space for the operating system and for window and for data. A little bit of data, enough for me. This particular computer here is a 256 gigabyte Linux machine where I can install, larger files. But I don't know why, if I go into downloads, I can't find Linux. Oh, there it is. If I select Linux Mint ISO file, it lets me create this persistent partition size, and I can slide the bar and create whatever size data partition I want to create on the flash drive. And that's the other thing that this utility can do for you. Are there any other questions before we conclude?
Yeah, can I ask
Just a quick comment. When you were talking a lot about Windows Pro, people shouldn't necessarily be afraid of Windows Pro. You can get a product key, as I did when I first got my machine. I think it was under $10 that will let you upgrade from home to Pro. And I've used it on a number of machines. It's just installing a new product key and buying it. So
Why
it's
would I want to
really
go to Pro?
inexpensive.
Why would I want to
There-
go to Pro over home? Then Dick.
The Pro gives you more control over the system than Home does. Home, for example, one particular thing is downloads you can schedule. You don't have to take them when Windows delivers them to you. And there are additional features, networking features, and some other things that you don't necessarily need for most people, but it's available to you. And Drew alluded to it when he was talking about Windows 11. He said like TPM had some features in it that were only available to Pro. So if you find that it says it's only available to Pro, people should not be afraid of upgrading. It's not expensive. It's just entering a product key and you reboot your machine and it's magic.
Yeah, advantages include control over BitLocker, control over whether you're using a local account, various other things, control over updates.
Oh, can you put that utility name in the chat session so I can save that out when we're done?
Which utility?
The one that lets you, or the website that you go to buy that upgrade product key?
Drew,
Oh.
I just Googled it. And, it was a number of years ago. I just Googled it and, I just, like you're doing any sort of shopping, just go shopping and it says product key and it's like under $10. And, you give them a credit card, you get the product and your email shows up with a product key. I mean, it's like magic.
Oh, okay. I didn't, and that's legal?
As far as I know, I've been running it for years and Microsoft hasn't knocked on my door yet.
So there are features like remote desktop that are only available in Pro that I used many moons ago. The other thing to make a note, if there's any interest, is virtualization. There's free versions of VMware and VirtualBox, for example, where you can load on multiple OSs and run them concurrently, assuming you have robust enough hardware.
Do you need to have a flash drive if you want to do this upgrade and go around the Windows 11 installation that Microsoft tells you to do? Or can I just do it on my computer?
This requires that you create a special installation media that will work only off the flash drive with this utility. You can buy a flash drive for under $10.
Yeah, I know. Okay, thanks.
Yep.
So here you're essentially eliminating the three checks that you brought up first about essentially you're bypassing those checks in order to install Windows 11. Is anything that is that warranted that it's going to work properly on the hardware if you don't have all that technology there, those prerequisites?
Well, what you want to do, what I recommend that people do is Microsoft provides an installation, Windows 11 installation compatibility tool that you can run on your computer, and it will look at your hardware, your disk, your memory and everything, and it will tell you whether your computer is eligible or ineligible to upgrade from 10 to 11. And in some cases, it doesn't like your CPU or the amount of memory that you have. And if those are issues, if it says that Windows 11 is not going to run because you have an incompatible processor, this is not going to get around that. This only gets around the fact that your computer is a little bit older, or you got it from someplace that didn't put TPM on the motherboard.
Thank you, Drew.
You're welcome.